obviously you're not a golfer.
I must have drank me about 15 Dr. Peppers.
Congratulations. How do you feel?
I gotta pay.
We have heard the chimes at midnight, Master Romeo.
You're an inanimate fucking object! You told I'm coming! And hell's coming with me, you hear? Who the fuck has the goddamn gall to call his house on a Tuesday night? God!
What up, folks? This is 3 for 3, and my name is Samuel Holler. I'm joined by two gents, Jackson Workman and Matthew Patterson. I hope y'all are doing well today. We got three crazy movies. All three, I think, have their own flavor and just style, and they all have comedic elements, but they also are very serious at times. And so, I guess if we want to start off with the fun one of the bunch, Jackson's pick, you want to take it away, good sir?
Yes, my pick this week was The Russians Are Coming, The Russians Are Coming.
Your lives.
It's the end times.
We're
But
boat.
is that what?
We're boat, little boy.
Yeah, it's a comedy from 1966, directed by Norman Jewison.
Go.
The rip to the fucking late. I picked this because he died earlier this year, and I have been meaning all year to do a memorial kind of tribute marathon because he's one of my favorite directors. And I haven't seen this one, so I figured I'd pick it for the podcast, get things started, and then keep going from there, rewatch all my favorites of his. But to sum up, the plot of this one, it's satire, Cold War satire, where a bunch of Russian sailors end up stranded on a beach on an island in New England, and they're just, trying to find a way to just get back to their ship and their submarine, and just go on back home. That's all they want to do, and they come across this family who's vacationing on the island, and they cross paths, and then they end up going into the town to try to find a way to get home. And the word gets out after they meet this family that Russians have invaded. And everyone in the town immediately starts freaking the fuck out. And there's a widespread panic. The Russians are invading. They're parachuting in. They're doing all these insidious things, and they're going to the townspeople band together to stop them. And yeah, it's hilarious.
Very fitting movie for the just past Veterans Day. Because
Oh.
the band of all the veterans together were all just like
Yeah.
legs going crazy.
Going absolutely crazy. Yeah. And so it's up to our family that we meet to help them get out safely without anybody being killed. And they want to try to avoid bloodshed because if these townspeople find these Russians, there will be bloodshed. So, and yeah, it's got a great, first of all, just great cast. Carl Reiner and Eva Marie Saint. God bless that woman. She just turned 100 this year. She's such a treasure. And so was Carl Reiner. They're the parents in the family. And Alan Arkin plays the main Russian. And he speaks Russian for a lot of the movie, which impressed me. I was like, did he have to learn all that? And apparently his parents or his grandparents were Russian, so that's where he learned it from. So that was cool to learn. But
When it started, I was like, am I missing subtitles? And I was like, oh no, that's the point.
But yeah, that was he was Alan Arkin was great as the Russian. I thought that was impressive how he was able to speak all that Russian. And the whole ensemble, like everybody, I love like big ensemble comedies like this. Like this is clearly in the vein. It's from the same writer as It's a Mad, Mad, Mad World. And like these big ensemble pieces where there's all this kind of frantic energy. Everybody's running around. It's kind of crazy. And, each of the townspeople have their own kind of distinct like personalities that you find amusing and get attached to as it goes on. And like the dude who played the police chief, I thought was really good.
I kept confusing him for Charles Durning, like
Oh, really?
all the time, and then I was like, It's not him.
He's kind of got that vibe a little bit. He's kind of a mix of Charles Durning and George C. Scott and a little John Wayne kind of. He had kind of all those
I
like
saw some John Wayne too, for sure.
yeah, and
Very
Jonathan Winters also was outstanding as the deputy. I thought he was really one of the performance-wise one of the standouts. And everybody was really just pulling their weight. So that's the first thing I'll say is the whole ensemble really all of them pulled their weight. Carl Reiner was hilarious. Even Marie Saint was great. The little kid, the son, was a fucking riot. Oh my God, that kid was so funny. He's just like
to
trying to
him.
yeah, just trying to kill him. Yeah. Trying to fuck those Russians up.
Yeah, when his dad comes out with the gun, and just starts shooting.
Yeah. Yeah, he's just like, oh, you didn't kill him, you just let him get away. You're a traitor.
Yeah.
That's fun. I was so the cast was all really pulling their weight. The writing was incredibly funny. Um, and I mean, just so many scenes, like again, like making fun of obviously the paranoia, of the times, and like the Cold War paranoia, and just it's hilarious seeing how over the slightest little thing, the townspeople just freak the fuck out and are ready to go out into the streets and kill these guys. They don't even know if they exist or not or why they're here. They're just like they're parachuting in. They've taken over the airport. Like they just go from 0 to 100 in like 2 seconds basically, and it's really funny. And I'm sure when it came out, people appreciated it even more, when they were living through that kind of stuff at the time. And it's also just really, you know, it's really cool because you do get to really know and love a lot of the characters, the main characters in particular. Um, like they each have their own, you know, like distinct character traits that make them each unique and their own little kind of mini journeys that they go through. You really like I love the arc with the younger Russian soldier falling in love with the girl. That was sweet. That was like, oh, okay. This is kind of one of the more heartfelt parts of the movie. Um, and you really liked seeing again, kind of like the the gradual bond that forms between the main family and the Russians and Alan Arkin's character like they kind of come to they're at odds a little bit for a lot of the movie, but they kind of come to like, be friends over the course of it. And one of the best parts, I love that part towards the end where, you know, Carl Reiner and the rest of the family, they're not super level-headed, but compared to everyone else in the town, they're the most relatively normal characters for most of the movie. But even by the end, he's succumbing to the madness of it all, and he like shoots the car. I was like super sad when he did that. I was like, oh my God, did he kill him? And for a solid minute there, you really think he's dead. And it's such a relief when you find out he's not. And it's like, wow, like that moment of just like, wow, even he temporarily there succumbed to the hysteria and almost caused something terrible to happen, that was honestly a really strong moment.
I love the scene where they're at the like dock and the submarine comes there and they're all arrested, each and every one of you, and then the whole town like kind of runs because they're gonna kill them all, and then they all run back because the police show up, and then they're about to run again.
Hmm.
There's a lot of like group gags, like you said, it's an ensemble kind of situation, and I think that really allowed it to have a very visual comedy that's not like stated in any way. It's just like very there.
Right, and there are a lot of gags like that. One of the funniest gags in the movie is a almost purely visual gag where the two of them are tied up together and they're trying so hard to yeah to
Hanging up on a wall.
yeah. Well, yeah, with her on the wall, that was funny. But then when Carl Reiner and the telephone lady are tied up together, that was
Oh
just
yeah.
yeah, that was such a great bit where he keeps like saying, "Don't fall over, don't fall over, don't fall over," and she keeps tipping over, and they're trying to get down the stairs and stuff. Like, there's so many great visual gags like that. And again, just yeah, I love that those kinds of movies where it's like these big ensembles like kind of going crazy, like a lot of it is visual. It's funny how much kind of chaos that's going on, and you get a big sense of that, especially with the big group scenes with like the sheriff and the veteran guy, they're in a lot of the big group scenes where everybody's kind of going crazy, and he's like pulling out the sword and trying to kill him with it, and he like breaks the sword in half, and just and oh my God, one of the funniest gags in the movie, it fucking killed me when they keep cutting back to that guy trying to get on that horse. That was so like it's funny enough the first time, and then it's funny enough the second time, and then you kind of stop thinking about it after the second time, and then they cut back to it like one or two more times. That last time, it's just this super wide shot. They look like dots where he's still trying to get on the horse. I love how much they committed to that bit. There were so many things like that throughout the movie where you really just appreciated how much they were committing to all these bits, and
That was something that Norman Jewison really did well, and he does well in all of his movies, is like the framing of what's going on is, even when it's close, everything that's happening around the characters and whatnot, and then it can have those moments where it's far away. And it's just interesting how like intimate it could be even from a distance.
right. And just how, I mean, there are so many different ways that he could have done that. Like any other director may not have done it quite like that. Like I noticed there were a lot of shots in the movie where it's like, okay, this could have been a much simpler, easier shot to get, but he really like, does that little extra thing to make it look more special. Like that last shot of him trying to get on the horse, he didn't need to make it that wide. He didn't need to make them that far in the distance. But he knew that if he did, it would look funnier and be more effective. So it's like, no, I really want to go above and beyond and make sure this is like an extra funny shot. There were a bunch of moments like that, and it was definitely appreciated, and he was very good at doing that. And I think yeah, again, just the writing was honestly also very funny, and I also love that because it was very similar to Moonstruck, where it's that same tone where a lot of it is kind of deadpan, kind of quiet. There's not like a bunch of big, you know, bomb like the people carry the scene. Like he doesn't rely on like these big musical cues or any of this other kind of big stuff that other comedies rely on. He's just like everything's quiet except for what's happening on screen, and it's kind of deadpan, and it's kind of like I'm just gonna let the performances and the writing carry it. And I love that style of comedy. It's very effective, and I think it was used very well here. And again, yeah, it's hilarious. Just and again, like super meaningful ending. Like it's so funny for most of the movie seeing them go crazy over these Russians and trying to track them down and kill them and stuff, and everybody's running back and forth and all this. But then you love it so much at the end when they all work together to save that kid, like immediately all of them, the Americans and the Russians, come together to save that kid. I love the touch. Again, going back to like, he's always trying to get the most effective shots and do it in the most effective way. I love that he kept several times cutting back to the Russian submarine captain, like looking concerned. Like even he, like probably the most stoic character in the movie, was concerned about, the kid up on the tower. And I'm just like,
I
he
love the
really,
shot from the tower where you see the whole town and the submarine and the gun already positioned up and everything.
yeah.
A cool POV.
Yeah. And just like, again, you really get a sense of like in that scene, everyone, like he cuts to everyone present, whether it's like you said, the wide shot of the town or the close-ups on the characters or whoever it is. Like you get a sense that everyone in that moment is there and is unified and is concerned. And that's what you need in order to make that scene really effective. And, when they save the kid, it's such a big cheer moment. And again, such a nice moment when they all escort them out into the ocean, and that's just super cool. You love just seeing them all unified finally at the end. And yeah, I thought the whole thing was both, incredibly hilarious and also incredibly just kind of touching and
Mm.
heartfelt, which it struck a good balance, for sure.
Matt, were there any parts that stuck out to you?
I mean, nothing that you guys didn't mention. I really enjoy the movie. Definitely, I didn't expect it to be I didn't know if it was going to be funny because, like, obviously you see Carl Reiner in the cast and you're just like, is this going to be, but you never know because sometimes back then I took serious roles. Then I kind of started getting into it. I mean, I don't know. One of the funny parts to me was the part where they just run up on the porch with the damn motorcycle and the old lady in the side cart. Or I can't remember because I was looking her up because for a second I thought she was from Wizard of Oz, but she's not. But she's been in other stuff. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. It was definitely reminiscent of a Mad, Mad, Mad World for sure.
I'm
I
glad you
definitely got
mentioned that
that
because that was also an incredibly funny, one of the many incredibly hilarious visual gags was just the two old ladies, yeah, riding around in the motorcycle with the sidecar with that sign, alert.
vibe.
And they're just tearing through the town, crashing into everything, and just yeah, just hilarious. So many great bits, so many hilarious. And Jonathan Winters, when he first gets the call to go in, she's just like, "What if they come and they start attacking us?" And he's like, "Well, you can either give up, without much of a fight, or you can pack your stuff and get out," whatever he says. Like again, just so many yeah, just very hilarious and very I also read um apparently the movie was not just a big hit in America. Apparently the Russians really liked it too. It was a big hit on both sides. He
I
said
love
that
the opening with the Yankee Doodle Dandy fighting the Russian theme with the like.
kind of sets the tone right off the bat.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, apparently they actually screened it in the Kremlin, like it was one of the only American movies to have that honor. But yeah, great time, great movie.
I think something that really also helped, and I have a fun fact to segue. The composer of the music, Johnny Mandel, he produced the Al Pacino Glengarry Glen Ross, which crazy that he goes from composer to producer, but that's a great producer credit. But he also wrote and produced music for the director of the next pick, which is my pick, Kansas City, uh, Robert Altman's MASH. And so I think that's also cool with the military aspect that he wrote music for two different, completely different directors, but also great directors.
So did he write the MASH theme song?
Hmm.
Wow, that's pretty
Yeah.
dope.
And he did not, unfortunately, work on Kansas City, but Kansas City is my pick. The 1996 Robert Altman film starring Jennifer Jason Leigh and Dermot Mulroney. I want to say Dylan McDermott, but it's Dermot Mulroney and a slew of other wonderful actors. This film is about a it's really Jennifer Jason Leigh's story, but her husband, played by Dermot Mulroney, um is just a scumbag. He gets into the wrong crowds. He's messing with people that he should not be messing with. And of course has a hit pretty much put out on him amongst everyone in the town. And so she devises a plan to get him back by kidnapping the wife of a very important man. And the whole story basically is her and her captor um going through the situation of her having to solve her husband's problems because she is Jennifer Jason Leigh's top dog no matter what. And intercut with scenes of jazz music playing from the main club that he hangs out in and the people who are really upset with him, which I found out almost all the scenes in that jazz club are improvised, which was I found really cool. And yeah, she needs her husband to stay alive and she doesn't know how to keep him alive, but she's gonna do it, god damn it. Or will she? Did y'all like this movie?
Yeah, it's funny because of the three, this was by far the one I knew the least about. This, so I was curious to see how it was going to be because with Altman, you have your A Altman movies and your B Altman movies. And like the A ones are like, Nashville and The Player and Gosford Park and all the big ones. And then you got your B ones like Come Back to the Five and Dime and Streamers and OC and Stigs and all that crap he made in the 80s.
Dr. T and the women.
Dr. T and the Women. You can't forget that one.
Gingerbread Man.
And
Gingerbread
this,
Man.
and this was I assumed this was going to be one of those B movies just because I knew very little about it. I know it's not one of his most popular movies. So I was very surprised when I watched it and fucking loved it. Like, I mean, really, this is my third movie of his that I've seen, and it's my favorite of the three, which I was
How
not
many have you
expecting.
seen?
Huh?
How many have you seen?
Three.
No, yeah, like what are the other two?
MASH and Gosford Park are the other two.
Oh shit. Okay.
Yeah, which is saying a lot because those are both classics and great movies. But I mean, truly, and I wouldn't even say this is the best of those three, but it's the one I personally enjoyed the most. Really, I fuck with this one a lot, which I wasn't expecting. But I mean, I love the story. I love the humor. I really, at the end of the movie, you get so attached to so many of these characters. And I also, again, like, also kind of a satire in a way, just like the Russians are coming, because it's like, just a satire of just, Depression era, politics and, like the inner workings of Kansas City and the racial relations and all that. And,
Scummy people are scummy and the righteous people are righteous.
yeah, it's very it's like I love the whole subplot like in the midst of all this, you got Steve Buscemi and all these other people, basically forcing people to go to the voting booths and everything and trying to line them all up and stuff and getting shot at the voting booth by the gangsters. It's like it's all very funny and yeah, like you said, it's there's a lot going on, but it's Jennifer Jason Leigh's story at its core, or it's the story of her and Miranda Richardson's character, and their dynamic and just everything they go through. That's the heart of the movie for sure. And man, I I thought Jennifer Jason Leigh's character, her whole arc, I thought was just so well done. I really did. I thought like
Even though
just,
she was a horrible person, you felt so bad for her at moments and like
I mean, really,
fucking shit, but you excuse it
I
later
mean, and it's like
crying and very upset.
yeah, it's like she's like obviously, she's a kidnapper, she's a lot of things, a lot of bad things, but it's like I don't know, by the end you followed her on this journey. You're kind of like Miranda Richardson's character where you start out thinking she's kind of abrasive and like, "Oh no, I don't really like you," and by the end you're kind of reluctantly like, well shit, now I'm kind of attached to you, but and I kind of want to, and that you want to talk about some shit I did not see coming. That last scene, I mean, fuck, that like hit me in the stomach like
Her blood in her hair was just
yeah, that was like, I mean, we were having fun, man. Like for most of the movie, we were having fun. It was a good time. We were having some laughs, and it just got really fucking dark and depressing in that last minute. It was like, whoa, okay. Didn't see that coming, but
just ties that ribbon on top when she walks out the door, and it's just that's the end of the story.
yeah, I love that last line. You want to know what I didn't do today? I didn't vote. Just like I was like, what a perfect button to the story. And again, just I don't know, the relationship between them is so just it's built up throughout the movie so well. Like it's so funny at times how she's like drugged out of her mind and she's having to drag her around basically. And then it's really heartfelt at times, like, first of all, just seeing them go through all these things together and seeing them talking in the office building at night when they're sleeping on the bench together. And then just like, I don't know, seeing them kind of relate to each other in a way, the contrast of like, it's funny because, Jennifer Jason Leigh's husband is obviously a scummy dude and the relationship isn't great. But at the same time, there is like love and excitement, at least on her side. Whereas like Miranda Richardson's got the ideal life with the powerful politician husband and the big home, but clearly there's no spark to that marriage. And they kind of realize that in that moment where they're on the bed falling asleep, And I think she kind of realizes that all the way to the end. And you can really, because, and there's, again, it's one of those movies where you look back and it makes sense. These things you were wondering about before, where you're just like, you notice for so much of the last 20 minutes, Miranda Richardson's character is so just quiet and just something's bothering her. You can see it. And I'm just like, what's her problem? Like, why is she so quiet? And you find out at the end, she's known the whole time she's going to have to shoot her in the back of the head, and she doesn't want to do it, and you just look back at it that way and you're like, fuck, wow. It was like there the whole time. It's so crazy.
That's where I really love all the characters that are like, even though Jennifer Jason Leigh is wonderful and Dylan McDermott, it's probably the best role I've seen him in. Their story, they're so self-absorbed with each other that like you focus on that, but the side characters really just bring the heat, and everyone who like supports them and everything has their own life that they've lived and roles and reasons. And that's why I love Harry Belafonte in it, because he is just one badass motherfucker.
Well, I gotta say, I mean, all the performances are great. Everyone's pulling their weight. Like you said, even the smallest characters are doing their part. No question he was the standout of the movie acting wise. I mean, from his first scene, I was like, oh wow, okay, this is a bad dude,
I just wonder what, like, if they had a script for him or if he just knew, was given like the story and he just went off. But like,
Yeah, I wonder because, like you mentioned, I read that too. Yeah, that he either I read that some of it was improvised and some of it he actually wrote. So I would like love, and it makes sense again looking back at it because it's like, okay, I can see he came up with a lot of this. A lot of it kind of feels kind of improvised. Some of the monologues he has, and that joke he tells when they're killing Blue Green. I'm like, he definitely came up with that on his own.
it was so fucked too. Like, you really like wanted Blue to be like pardoned.
I know, but like you said, you're exactly right about how even the smallest characters feel like real people who have like lived a life. Like Blue was a character who maybe didn't have that many lines or that much screen time, but man, I was sad when they like killed him. Like you did want him to be spared. It because I don't know, like you sympathized with him. You saw that he was just like this poor driver who he's probably not paying well at all and is just trying to do something for some extra money. At least, even if that's not what happened, that's the backstory you create in your head because he's such a vivid character, even when he's such a small one. Like all the characters in the movie were like that. And
I,
yeah,
side note, but I really wanted to take a shot every time Jennifer Jason Leigh said pussy or hiney, because the way she said both of those words were just absolutely like disgusting in a great way.
I remember the close up of her when she said it for the first time, like pussy. I was like, wow, just said that right into the camera. That was a bit unnerving.
Not to like knock her, but she looks like someone who lived in the 1930s in terms of just the weight of the world weighing down on her face and teeth. And she's just gnarly, and you support her so much, but she is not the person you would want to be in this time period and everything. And so I really like how they made her character like relatable and also just a clear symbol of what we want from this movie.
Yeah. And I think, again, like I was really noting and appreciating all of these like details they gave to her character. Like, I mean, the backstory about her having the kid was like genuinely such a great part of the movie. And just that scene where, again, you look back at it in hindsight after you know what she's gonna do. Miranda Richardson clearly feels even guiltier after learning that, where she's talking to her like, "You didn't tell me you had a kid." And she's like, "I didn't have a kid, like I gave her away." And just even like also the detail of learning that the kid died and just all this, it just makes the character so much more well layered. And it gives you more of a history of her relationship with Dermot Mulroney because he's the one who made her give the kid up. And so clearly she's giving a lot more than he is in this relationship, and you can clearly see that. And and just the detail also of her loving Jean Harlow. I thought that was such a great scene where they're in the car and she's like talking about why she loves her and how she's defending her hairdo, who Miranda Richardson said looked cheap, and just all these details that just make her such a layered character. And, you know, again, so many of the characters were like that, like all of them, even the smallest ones, like, and so many great arcs. Again, like Harry Belafonte just spitting out some incredible monologues. I mean, just really gives you a sense of the character and really just gives you it like and even like the littlest lines, like her assistant, who she is with in the office, where when they leave, she's like, don't tell anybody about this. And she says, oh, don't worry, they won't ask me. No one ever does. And she closes the door. Like, I just learned a little bit about that character, like she just became a little bit more three-dimensional just through that line.
I have
And
a question for Matt because we talk about a lot of Robert Altman's like camera work from a distance and his use of slow zooms while characters are interacting. It took me a while, like maybe 30 minutes for this movie to like have one of those moments where I was like taking that sip of that first soda in forever. I was like, and they were just walking outside and it was super far away, but like still in the street. So you see like both angles of the street and like that they're kind of hitting that corner of. And I didn't know if you noticed that it like didn't feel like one of his movies at first.
I definitely agree because like I was thinking about that when I was watching it that like it's missing those. It's not that it doesn't have them, but like almost all of his other movies have them like constantly. Like it's like literally every other scene, and it's not a bad thing. That's what we talk about it, we love it. But I will say this one's like a lot more closer, a lot more intimate than some of his other movies where they're just kind of far away, kind of viewing at a distance. Which I did, so I agree with that. Yeah, I definitely felt that way.
um, oh, you guys said something?
I just found it really cool because like even though his movies have such close up personal like moments, I felt like that the fact that it was for such a long time in this movie, it allowed me to really suck myself into the world and these characters and where things were going. And like the girl who came there and the white woman were supposed to greet her at the train, and that kid who kind of picks her up and takes her on the story to the club and everything, and their perspective of the music from above while you get the story going on at the bottom where Jennifer Jason Leigh's freaking out being taken out. It was like you still have a whole grasp of the entire place that normally his wide shots provide, but it's right in the moment, and I really appreciated that.
For sure. And I
Yeah.
thought, I think honestly, the use of the that was kind of one of the things that stood out to me the most was the soundtrack. I mean, just the most banging jazz tunes. It really, and what I loved is, like any good score or soundtrack, it does its job the way any good soundtrack is supposed to. But even more than that, it felt to me like the jazz band was almost its own character in the movie. Like it also had, it gave it so much of its personality. It almost became like a living, breathing character itself, which is why I loved the scene with the dueling saxes, because that was almost like, the scene where the jazz band got to come alive and be a character in and of itself. Like, or this is our scene where our part of the plot happens, almost kind of in a way. And that was I appreciated that because there are so many scenes where all the different storylines get to have their moment, that where they contribute to the plot. And that was their turn, and it was really cool. And again, just so much of the personality of the movie really came from that soundtrack. And I read that apparently he shot all of those scenes with the jazz band first and
Oh, wow.
then shot all the plot stuff and decided when to intercut it with the movie. So
Cool. Is that really like as someone who writes music, having that core like idea that can be used throughout whatever project I'm working on is really ideal for especially having the visual medium that is the rest that is film.
mhm. Yeah, it's a good, again, like it's a really cool way of really making it the music like a core part of like the bones of the movie, the DNA of it, you know.
That makes me really wonder who the fuck Robert Altman was hanging out with when he was young, because I'm sure he was with some really cool people that are like different cultural like experiences and whatnot. Because I feel like all of his movies are grounded. So,
He's apparently from Kansas City, so
oh, okay.
I imagine he may have spent some time in some places like that. Who knows? But yeah, the whole thing was just such a surprise. I mean, I'm so glad you picked this because I promise you, if I ever saw this, it wouldn't have been anytime soon. Because, you know, and again, I've said it before, that's one of my favorite things about doing this podcast is discovering gems like that that I never would have paid attention to, you know, because I genuinely did not expect to like this as much as I did. I mean, truly, you know, this was overall one of my favorite lineups of any episode we've done because, you know, all three were fantastic, and this was the one that I was the least sure of, and it ended up being, you know, just such a delight. So,
Hell yeah. Well, speaking of movies that end in gut-wrenching deaths of our main characters or pseudo main characters, depending on how you look at it, Mikey and Nicky, the motherfucker, Mikey and the motherfucker Nicky are best friends, and I want Matt to take it away.
Yeah, so my choice was Mikey and Nicky, directed by Elaine May, which stars John Cassavetes and Peter Falk, uh, which is pretty. I'll get to that in a second. Also, Ned Beatty,
Yeah,
not
fuck
Warren
Ned.
Beatty,
Fuck Ned Beatty.
not Warren Beatty. Um, and then there's also a really cool cameo by M. Emmett Walsh as the bus driver. Uh, but basically, the whole movie is about John Cassavetes. He's Nicky. Sorry, I watched this pretty inebriated. Basically, he calls his friend Mikey, who they're childhood friends from, you know, childhood, and he's basically a gangster. And John Cassavetes has a hit out on him, so he calls him in like fear and all that, and he's pretty fucked up the whole movie. Cassavetes is just gone, like goddamn. Um, and so they spend the whole night kind of trying to evade this hit, and the hitman played by Ned Beatty uh, is following them, and it's kind of this weird, I guess I want to call it like a tightrope between buddy comedy and like slash drama and like kind of thriller-ish because they're constantly being chased. But it was really refreshing for me because you kind of think you've seen all the buddy comedies that have come out, or you know, like the two guys together, and then you're like, oh, nice. John Cassavetes and Peter Falk, who just seem to have this great chemistry. Every time they're in a scene, it's really nice. One of the things that I looked up that I found out about was other than just being grossly like over budget, the reason why was because Elaine May would leave the fucking cameras running for hours on end to catch like any weird spontaneous thing they did like they
That's why
did
there's hundreds of hours of footage.
footage. And at one point, the Peter Falk and Cassavetes left the set and the camera was still running. So one of the camera operators yelled cut and she scolded him for it. And he was like, well, they left. And her response was, yeah, and they might come back. And I'm just like, Jesus Christ. And then it took her over a year to edit the movie in a suite, which then resulted in litigation between her and Paramount, which resulted in them cutting the movie into something that's really terrible. But the version I think we all saw was probably her version, which makes a lot more sense. And I thought it was really cool. Like, I liked it a lot. I was definitely involved with the characters. And it makes me want to see more Cassavetes in movie, like you know, like more movies where he's in it.
He walked into that girl's house, smacked the shit out of her, and was like, "Oh, I'm not here to hurt you."
Yeah,
But then but previously hit her so hard and threatened to punch her face through the wall. I was like, God fucking hell.
he broke the lock off the door. She's like, "You better get out of here." And he said, just pushed the door right open, broke the lock. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
If he's not letting Mia Farrow get raped by the devil, he's doing shit like that, you know? Um, yeah, this speaking of seeing Cassavetes and things, I just watched Rosemary's Baby like a week or two ago. So this is the second time I've seen him recently, and he's arguably even more of an asshole in this than he was in that.
One
Yeah.
thing that freaked me out. I did not know Peter Falk had a glass eye.
Hmm.
So I always just thought it was a lazy eye. And so I really like focused and I couldn't tell which one specifically was the glass eye until towards the end. I think it's his left one.
Yeah, it's his left, our right,
Yeah.
I think.
Because he was talking to Ned Beatty in the car, like when he was chasing that dude that was not Cassavetes down, and that dude was like running for his life, and then he trips and they hit the brakes right at that moment. But when he like is like yelling at him previously to like let him out of the car, his left eye just swivels all the way to the corner.
Yep.
There's a part, I think it's that part towards the end where he's talking to his wife. That thing is just going all the way over.
There's the one scene that it was kind of funny to me, which is kind of fucked up, was when Cassavetes was like, make it like kind of forcing himself on the girl. And Peter Falk's just sitting there and he's got his glass eye just goes like it's forward and then it just he's just staring at them like awkwardly. And that was one of the most it's funny because this movie will have like really kind of heartfelt scenes where they're just talking like on the bus or like in the graveyard, which is still kind of annoying. Not annoying, but Cassavetes is just being an asshole. But then there are movies that are like scenes that are so like weird, like where it's just like you're nervous, you're not feeling comfortable. Clearly the characters aren't comfortable, and you're just watching it like there's that the one scene, of course, where he's forcing himself on the girl, but then also the scene earlier when they're in the bar and they're talking about like being tired and stuff, and then Cassavetes just stares at Peter Falk for a second, like with a smile, and then it just kind of drops, and then he's like, I gotta get out of here.
Mhm.
And it's like, I don't know, it seems like that where it's just like you're kind of wondering like what am I watching, but then you kind of get the gist of the movie as it goes along.
That's where even with all the horrible shit and that Cassavetes says and does, when he's like talking to his baby mama towards the end and is like, she's like, go call your friend, like have him help you. He was like, he's not my friend anymore. I've done too much to him. Like he has that regret and that remorse, and I think that's where I really started to turn and become sympathetic for him. And so that's what made that ending so gut wrenching when he's like just slamming on the door, scared for his life and everything, and it ends how it ends.
Yeah.
At
Honestly,
a certain point, they just keep talking about how he's already dead in a sense, and so I was like, oh, it's happening.
yeah. Um, yeah, my relationship with the characters definitely shifted as the movie went along because I mean it's clear from the start Nicky is a bit off to say the least. But he goes from like when you first meet him, it's like yeah, he's off, but it's like okay, it's understandable he's very paranoid because they're coming to kill him. And then, when they get to the bar, but you're like, yeah, okay, he's acting kind of erratic, but whatever, nothing, it's all relatively harmless so far. And then they get on the bus, and he's being a dickhead to the bus driver, and he's like trying to fight the bus driver and shit. And I'm like, okay, this guy's kind of a dick. And then they get to the cemetery, and that's a great scene. The writing in that scene is razor fucking sharp. I mean, truly some of the best dialogue I've heard in a movie in a while. Just like, I love Peter Falk's line, like, I like enough of this, what happens after you die bullshit. I leave that mission guys to the Catholics, I thought that whole conversation was just so great. But but at that point you're just kind of like, okay, he's kind of a dick. And then progressively you're just like, okay, this guy is a pretty fucking out of control. This guy is just kind of a tool. And then when they get to the girl's apartment, that was like a hard fucking turn for me. I was like, oh, you're like, I hate you. Like actually, like you actually suck and you're a scumbag and I'm not rooting for you for the rest of the movie. And Peter Falk also in that scene is an asshole too. Like he was the sensible one. And then after that point, I'm like, well, fuck the both of you, like truly. I mean, because he's the one who slaps her first. I was just like, Jesus Christ, man, he's married too. I'm just like, you're both scumbags. And
The
you
scene
know,
jumps over the like diner counter to get his creamer.
yeah, to get the cream, yeah,
Yep.
that was crazy. And then like, yeah, from that point on, I mean, every scene that Cassavetes is in from that point on, he just gets progressively to me more and more menacing. Like when he goes to the baby mama's apartment, I did not share your feelings there, Sam. To me, like again, he's basically trying to force himself into the house and just being like, open the goddamn door and shit. I'm just like, okay, man, like calm the hell down. You can see how scared she is of him too. Like before he even comes into the apartment, like he's pulled this shit a million times with her, I'm sure. And then again, he breaks into the other girl's apartment, literally breaks the lock and slaps her in the face and shit. And I'm like, man, I hope Ned Beatty gets your ass. I was honestly, Ned Beatty's the hero of the movie as far as I'm concerned. I literally, when he shot him at the end, I was like, good fucking riddance, Jesus Christ. You know, he was definitely not the most likable main character of all time. And you know, Mikey also, again, that scene in the girl's apartment, you kind of lose sympathy for him there as well because he also is pretty scummy in that scene. But he's still, after that, considerably more likable than Nicky is. You at least like when he's talking at the end, like when they have the big fight in the street, that scene is incredible. And you genuinely like, you know, even if you don't like Mikey at that point in the movie, you see where he's coming from as far as like, you know, why he feels the way he feels about Nicky. And you're just like, yeah, everything you're saying sounds pretty fucking spot on. Like, you know, and when he breaks his watch, I mean, just that was fucked up. And I love the part where he, you know, throws the $200 at him and he's just like, yeah, fuck you, now get out of here. Just the writing throughout the whole movie was just razor fucking sharp. I mean, just masterful character development. Just, I mean, and the two performances from them were absolutely incredible. So, you know, again, like we were saying about Kansas City, every conversation they have just makes them more layered, you know, and it really helps that the writing is so strong. And this is the first Elaine May directed movie that I've seen. So getting a sense of like her style and her sensibilities and her talents, I'm like, damn, it's a shame she only did 4 movies because
Sheltered Sky.
what a
Well,
talent.
I mean, apparently this cost like somewhere between like $3 and $4 million. And for the 70s, to me, that was I was even looking at the movie and I'm like, I don't see that. But of course, it's because of the film that she used,
Yeah.
which is apparently also 3 times more than Gone with the Wind.
I understand
And
why
it's
her
like, God,
career,
and
yeah, I
I
understand
can
why her
almost,
career suffered after this. She kind of shouldn't have been shooting more than Gone with the Wind. She caused the budget to go 4 times over, you
which
know, like
doesn't just didn't equate because I was looking at the movie and I'm like, I feel like this would be made for like maybe 1 million, like at the time, maybe just because of
I
paying the actors
read,
and
yeah, the
stuff.
budget got up to 3 or 4 million
It's like,
dollars, which yeah, is
it's
way
like,
higher
God.
than it was supposed to be.
And then it took her over a year to edit it, so I can see why Paramount was a little like, what the fuck?
Oh, I definitely see it, but it's still it's like, you
But it's a good
know,
movie. I mean, it's
obviously it's not as crazy as this, but it reminds me a lot of Michael Cimino, where it's like, damn, you were such a talent. Like, why did you have to be so crazy and do all that stupid shit and ruin your own career, you know?
Found his money
Um,
scheme, and that was buying land, not on film.
yeah, I can tell you what's not on
And blowing up
film.
horses.
Say what?
And blowing up horses. He made money off of that too.
Blowing up horses and ripping out cows' intestines and having real cockfights on the set. He was a psychopath, but building an entire irrigation system under the land to make the grass more green, crazy shit. But just so obviously it's not as bad as that, but it's still kind of the same where it's like, man, you're so talented. I just hate that you had to do this shit and kind of blow your own career up in the process. But because I mean, what a talent. Seriously, I mean, this movie was incredible. I mean, probably my favorite of the three, I mean, that we saw. So, like, again, just the writing was just so natural, so poignant, so the relationship between these two guys was so real and just, so many great conversations they had about themselves, their friendship, everything. I mean, seriously, that scene in the street where they're arguing with each other, I mean, that is just fucking palpable. Like you
I
can
mean,
feel, especially with their acting, like Peter Falk in that scene. He just looks like he's
sometimes
ready
you
to
just want to go
blow,
see a movie.
Say what?
But sometimes you just want to go see a movie.
Exactly.
That's
Um,
ugh.
yeah, they never did get to that movie, did they?
No, fucking Ed Beatty was waiting outside and had to go inside, kept getting jerked around because they were saying they're going to do one thing and then they did another.
Yeah, it took
Like,
him
goddamn.
45 minutes to get to that bar.
Yeah.
I love that little just that little like minor detail of just him being a total incompetent. That was just so funny.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't a big thing they made of it. It was just like little things they kept saying to highlight what an incompetent he was. And him just saying shit like, I'm not gonna fucking make anything on this, man. Like I shouldn't have even taken this job. Shit
Yeah.
like that.
Uh, yeah, no, I'm glad I finally got to watch it, so I'm glad that we all enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Jackson, I have one unrelated question for you before we end this.
Oh yes.
Is that a Lilo and Stitch lamp in the corner?
You bet your sweet ass it is.
I mean, I just wanted to make sure I was saying
Yeah.
that right.
It took you 8 or 9 episodes to finally notice it.
I don't know if it's always been in the corner or if this is the first time that I've seen the lamp.
It's
Yeah.
been, I don't think that my shot was ever wide enough for you to see the whole thing,
I
but
just saw the ear and I was like, what is that?
yep, the best
I
purchase
hell
I ever
yeah.
made in my life, that lamp.
I mean, hey, I don't blame you. I just had to make sure I was seeing it correctly.
hmm You want to know how much that lamp cost me?
How much?
626.
Hmm. You know,
626.
that's not bad at all. Is that a reference to something?
He's experiment 626.
Oh, fuck. I've not seen Lilo and Stitch in so long.
So, but all the fans out there,
We'll
they
get that reference.
No.
that's a fitting thing for you to point out because my plan today is to go see Chris Sanders' new movie, The Wild Robot. So
Hell yeah.
I hope that turns out well.
All right. Well, that was another episode of 343. That was hard to do. I'm sorry. Quick reminder, if Russians come, befriend them. If you're stuck in 1930s Kansas and your husband's a piece of shit, let him die. And if you have a best friend that's wanted by mobsters, don't fucking help him.
Let him die.
Let him die too. And that's your weekly reminder to keep watching movies. And we'll be back next week with another set of 343. Hell yeah.
That's probably the best outro we've ever done.